This is Harold Osmer, Ironstone Concours d'Elegance, and Ragtime Racers.
Line, baby.
Oh, buddy, look at them go. Hey, we're up in Murphy's, California for the Ironstone Concours d'Elegance. This is the 27th annual concours at Ironstone Vineyards and Wineries. Vineyards, it says mostly. There it goes. Hey, Ironstone Vineyards, 27th annual, right there. Hey, this was just a weekend or two ago from the time we're doing this. Now, Concours d'Elegance, of course, means elegance cars. Oh, there was a wide variety of cars out there, including this big gem. Oh, man, so nice. And lots of color in random cars. Look at this guy. Woo-wee. This was a fascinating setting. This is up in Gold Country now. This is, you can see it's east of Stockton and Modesto and Yosemite, sort of. Murphy's was actually two brothers who went up to do some gold mining. They discovered gold, but they decided to mine the miners instead. And here's the town. You see that little circular-looking green thing there in the middle? That's the amphitheater at Ironstone. The dirt spot up to the top on that was where the racetrack wound up. And here's another view from the program. And each of these strips of green, the grass, are terraced, so they go up a little bit. And at the vineyards here, they have movies and concerts and all kinds of different things for the community to do throughout the year. It's a fabulous place. We'd not been there before. And if you follow the trails, this is just through their property. It's an amazing place. Of course, the weather was sparkling, and you turn a corner or two, and you can find these sorts of things. Paging Bob Ross. My gosh. Couldn't believe it. Was still as could be. And every time you turn the corner, being in concourse, of course, there are lots of different cars, and they had a variety as well. That Di Tommaso. And that Di Tommaso was not alone. Just wonderful. Everybody we encountered in Murphy's, California, and at the concourse was spectacular. Everybody was fun. Everybody was open. Everyone was friendly. What a wonderful time we had. Ooh, Corvettes. Hey, wait, they snuck a Camaro and a Ranchero in there with the Corvettes. What the heck were they thinking? Who knows? They were all pretty and nice. Oh, this was one of my favorite corners, though, up on the high terrace in the back. They had all these old caravans. And these guys all set up camp. They're hanging out their laundry, and they're having a good time. And I guess they were able to camp there overnight. That's a 1954 trailer there. And I got to talk with this guy, because, of course, he has a ukulele and some tiki things back there. Ken. Hey, Ken. Yeah, I was going to bring out my ukulele, but I didn't have enough time for that. What I did have time for was just to move around and see what I could see. There's so much area to be covered here with these cars, and again, it was a spectacular day. Oh, look at this guy. He's got an early pop-up camper type thing. He turned it into a tiki bar. A pop-up tiki bar. Oh, motorcycles. They had a couple of these 19 whatever Ambassador flat track motorcycle in the back of a Studebaker pickup. Oh, love it. Ooh, Mercedes-Benz. Oh, no, not Mercedes, goofball. Harley Davidson, look at that. 1915 Harley Davidson 3-speed with a step starter, the whole bit. I was always surprised at these AMX cars, at just how small they are. You know, you'd fit in there, but oh my, there you go. And then you get surprised by how big some other cars are, like this guy, the Edsel. Terrific stuff. Look at this. Oh, Chrysler 300. This is a 1961 Chrysler 300. Now, I know a guy who works for a guy who's got a thing for these cars. So I had to get some pictures of this. Well, you need to get your pilot's license to fly one of these things or drive one of these things. All the buttons and switches and chrome and twisty seats, and it's an air conditioner down in there. Oh my. And I'm not going to pretend that I know too much about these cars, but there's like a plain Jane version and the real fancy version of the same car here. You put down in the comments what you think these cars are and tell me all about them. That'd be great. I'm kind of a car guy, but I'm not going to pretend I know more about this than I do. I do appreciate a nice looking car, though, when I see one. Look at this. And having this terraced parking area, let's call it, allows you to get down low and get some interesting pictures. Fascinating angles on these cars. There were two of these guys parked side by each. Slightly different. But they were right next to one another, which allows for some cool comparison shots. Ooh, nice. Look at that. Of course, this is not really my era. The British stuff doesn't appeal to me that much. I'm more the plain Jane Windsor white Torino kind of guy. This is a 1970 Ford Torino GT. It was Motor Trend's Car of the Year, I think, that year. Pretty cool. I liked it. And, of course, you got Porsches and whatever else going on there. It was a fascinating day. I had roughly 300 cars out there, including a farm truck with a big cow in the back and a little girl in the front, so you can have a good time. They were taking a lot of pictures over by this guy. It was terrific. And most of the proceeds for the day's concourse and events were donated to 4-H, the local 4-H club. There were lots of kids walking around with chickens and goats and whatever else, and they were having themselves a good time. I didn't put any pictures in here because YouTube's got some weird rules about that, so I didn't put any pictures of kids in here. Look at this, a beautiful car. And a car from that same era. This is a Stearns. Won Best of Show. Look at that. Winners. Everybody smiles when you win Best of Show. Now, Stearns, I happen to know, was driven by Barney Oldfield in the way back days. Heaven. There you go. Barney Oldfield with a Stearns race car. And a lot of folks don't realize that that's what race cars looked like in the old days. They were stripped down stock cars. People think race cars look like this. Well, they do, sort of, today. Called a body shop on that guy. They actually use this car for stuff. But in the way back days, race cars looked like this. And today, that same car looks like this. And this brought out the Ragtime Racers, who were there to support the event this year. I guess they've been there several times, and they actually built a track out there for them this time. This is a touring group. They are a charitable group that like to keep this old-time racing alive. They put on exhibitions of speed where they drive at decent speeds, and we'll see that in a moment here. But all these cars are usable. They're drivable. They are super clean when they come out. They are not difficult to maintain, but they do require a lot of maintenance, and the Ragtime Racers look after them and do that. Otherwise, these cars would just sit in some guy's collection and they'd be pretty, but it doesn't really do a whole lot for the cars. Anything mechanical needs to be exercised, much like our own bodies. And you can see they're relatively simple inside. If you want to call that inside, they're kind of indoor-outdoor cars, aren't they? And there's nothing for the mechanic to hang on to there. They had to add some things. Well, we had a speakers forum where we got to get up there and speak. That's me in the hat. You pick out which one of the four, and that would be me. And we got to talk about things. Our buddy Special Ed Archer. There it is. They let me sell a few books, and so we sold a book or two along the way. But nobody was there to see me. They were there to see this fella, Brian Blaine. He's the guy who had the wonderful idea of starting up the Ragtime Racers. And again, they were featured here. And so they actually got out on the track, which is fabulous. Part of their show is they bring the cars out in front of the big crowd, and then they have this racer, and this racer just won't start. And they can't figure out why it won't start. And they get the guys out and they say, well, let's figure it out. And so they take the whole car apart, trying to figure out what the problem is. Then they bring the microphone over to usually Brian, who's sitting in one of the blue cars behind this. I said, what do you think's going on? He said, oh, I don't know. These guys stink up the show every time. Can never figure out what they're doing. Meanwhile, these guys are working feverishly right in front of the crowd. Everybody can see it. This whole process takes about 8 minutes to do this. And they're well practiced, as you can see, and they just work this thing apart. And they say, well, what is it? What is it? We're stinking up the show. Why are we? Skunk. And everybody laughs. And then they put the car all back together. And again, the whole thing, take it apart, put it back together, about 8 minutes. And that's all good fun. And the cars get to stage up. Here they are staging up. Flag flies.
Yeah! Slide, baby.
There's real speed on this too. I didn't speed this up. They had 5 cars, I think 5 or 6 cars out on the track. They went a little bit uphill, went around the far side and came back across. You can see the crowd over there on the left. The dust was blowing towards me, not too far. Look at them. They get right up alongside each other. Now, they're not competitively racing, but they are moving around in a very spirited manner, let's call it. And very exposed. And the sound is magnificent. The dust is just tremendous. And the crowd loves it. Brian's wife, Sandy, gets to drive as well. The racing grandmother. Oh, so many kids come out and want their picture taken with her. And then when that's done, you go back over to the other side where it's much more genteel, and you look at some more cars, and you have a good time with that, because that's where you are. And since you're at the vineyard, let's get a little wine from the Ironstone Vineyards. They were very generous with their sampling. And you gotta love a town that doesn't take itself too seriously. They were very welcoming there in Murphy's, California, at the Ironstone Concours d'Elegance for my wife and I, and we certainly enjoyed ourselves. And I put this little video together just to share that with you and say, if you got a chance to go up there next year in September, look them up. Ironstone Concours. They'll tell you what the date is, and you can come on up and visit in Gold Country and have a wonderful time.